It's like I said earlier on, I think nobody is exempt from PTS or having depression or anxiety. And when I've had repeated trauma since I was a child till probably 16 years ago, as you know.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
And you get to start hearing about some of the calls and some of the emotionally charged stuff. And when I was out west, I spent a lot of time doing ride-alongs with LAPD and Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. And that fascinated the guys.
$1 million idea right there.
What?
Therapy in the passenger seat of a police car.
So I will tell you that
That's great.
I contracted with a bunch of different departments, and it was not uncommon. The chief was all for it. I'll give him a shout out. Actually, it was Freehold Borough, and Freehold Borough chief said, "Not a problem. You can take an hour in each car." It was actually an hour and 15 minutes back then. And I used to go from car to car. And they knew, the other officers absolutely knew who was in the practice, because there's all sorts of stuff with confidentiality if they weren't comfortable. But that chief was so proactive.
That's what you get ahead of the situation.
It was awesome.
You know,
you
stay on top of it. Could you imagine going to one of those calls and you have a therapist sitting right next to you that you could talk to right after that call?
Yeah.
Well,
that's amazing. That's a brilliant idea.
All you did was become one of their peers after hour 2 or 3. And I see this in coaching my kids, okay? So I coach 10 and 11-year-olds. And my oldest, who's first year I'm not coaching him, is 13. Well, he did certain things. You know, he's always been a taller kid, so he always had to watch what he ate. And, you know, I trained him a certain way. And if I'm trying to get to a 10 and 11-year-old, a lot of times, now mind you, my oldest son knows what he knows because I taught him this. But I'll bring him over and I'll say, tell him about how to eat right before a game. All right? And they'll listen to him. And I'm like, you little son of a bitch, how come you're not listening to me? But I know why. I know because it's a peer. Mm-hmm. It's somebody that speaks at their level. When you sit in that police car in that passenger seat and you're riding along, you are now becoming one of their peers.
Yes, however, I have never worn that gun badge and patch. I have never had to act when something goes south. Yeah. Okay, I mean there's a very, very important delineation that I want to make that clear. The honor goes to you guys. I will say, no matter where I am in the world talking, I have always had the light lift.
But you know, it's not like a peer. It's more of a nonpartisan liaison. You know what I'm saying? You're not part of the department. You're just there pretty much to be a friend with a listening ear.
But I'm going to tell you this from personal experience. While we stand in front of the bullet, so to speak, the therapists the true therapists in the police world do the real heavy lifting, because you have to hear us unload stuff that we can't unload to everybody else.
I will say that I bear witness to your pain. That absolutely, that is my job. But it's because you've done your job. And you need to understand that.
But you were something to deflect what was going on in our minds during a shift. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I think the most entertaining one was when there was a situation, there was a domestic, and there was a young child involved, probably about 7. And a call comes across the radio, and it says, "Bring Sigmund Freud. We have a situation."
So did you come with the white powder on your nose too?
So it was pretty funny. And because they didn't want to arrest, the dad in front of his daughter, right? Yeah. And just, kind of how to navigate that. And I remember sitting on the curb with her. And I remember saying to her, we were talking about just, different things. And I said, I told her what I did for a living. And I said, did anybody tell you that you can be anything you want to be? And she just looked at me and she said, no. And I said, you can be. I said, that's the beauty of living here.
Well, the individual sitting right next to you is living proof of that. You can be whatever you want to be. I'm not even going to say your age because nobody can tell how old Amanda is anyway.
It's that Irish skin.
She chose to become involved in the police world, having zero stake in the game, just because she didn't like the way police officers were being treated. How do you go about doing that?
It's just by having a heart. As much as I have nothing to do, apart from my family, I have nothing to do with the police world.
Now you have everything to
Now
do
I
with
have
it.
everything to do with it because they've basically adopted me into their fold, right?
Well, you're the symbol.
Yeah,
That's what you are.
But it's like I said earlier on. I think nobody is exempt from PTS or having depression or anxiety. And when I've had repeated trauma since I was a child till probably 16 years ago, as you know, and so having that understanding, right? It doesn't necessarily mean the level of trauma is trauma, and how we process it is what makes us who we are, right? How we deal with it, and so I can relate to a lot of that the history of repeated trauma, and I think that's why I get it, and I think that's kind of why people actually talk to me is. Because I'm no counselor. Like, I'm not. Sorry, Mike. Sorry.
It's your first time on a podcast.
No,
don't worry.
Amanda is going to read bedtime stories. Okay,
No.
with that voice, I'm nodding off over here.
That's why she couldn't be in a
Boring
police
you to
car.
death, that's what
she
I'm
couldn't
doing.
be in a police car on midnights because she'd be talking and be like,
But
it's just a listen thing. It's like if you understand, if you have empathy and you have an understanding of someone's pain and hurt, just sit and listen. You can relay in so many ways. Even though our experiences are very different, they're very similar in many ways, because trauma is trauma. And you just have to be willing to listen and adopt that situation. Right?
And what you said is so spot on. I mean, what when we first did, so it was Teen Line Cares that got set up for the teens, and when it was time to write the legislation and do cop to cop, we did the first training. Mm-hmm. So, and in the first training, we flew in the person that was the director of the Los Angeles Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is the oldest hotline. And what most people don't know is that the Los Angeles Suicide Prevention Hotline would take on most of the hostage negotiators with LAPD, Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, Santa Monica, all those areas, because teaching them active listening skills and teaching them, because negotiations are typically done on a phone. So that the negotiators ended up being trained by them. So the first training was done by the director, who's Dr. Jay Nagdeman, and then their head hostage negotiator, who is Ozzie Crenshaw out with LAPD. So really being able to do that type of training, and I know that since then it's changed. When I went on to do Copline, which is now international, that training, Dr. Jay Nagdeman actually went on from Los Angeles Suicide Prevention Hotline. He has been with the Los Angeles Police Department in their behavioral science services for the past, I think, 17 years. So he's our lead trainer. He has been for all of this time. But that was key. And so there are typically two reasons why retired officers cannot end up vetting through to end up on Copline's lines, because it's an extremely difficult process. Not everybody gets in. And those reasons are, number one, and first and foremost, is that a retired officer doesn't want to have to relive their worst day.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand that.
Yeah. And they realize that the training, because they're good listeners, they're this, they're that. However, they don't expect it to be as emotionally charged as it is, and they kind of realize, what, I don't really need to go through this. I earned my retirement and absolutely love it, support it. So they self-exclude, and that normally is around day 2. And the other reason why is because they can't give up their favorite toys. And their favorite toys are giving advice and judging. And if you can't get rid of those two, you're also not answering the damn lines.
But I will say this, I've had the unique opportunity to, through Amanda and through Bill Mazur. Bill Mazur actually put this the best. He said, when you get a taste of being a helping professional, and I'll never forget his words. I actually made a clip out of it. That's how much it impacted me. When you get a taste of being a helping professional, there is no drug in the world that will give you a better high than that. So while you're helping somebody else, what you're doing is you're helping yourself.
Mm-hmm. And that's the premise of this podcast.
True.
right?
Yeah.
Helping everybody else, and
It is. I found a healing. It's like I'm not, and I said this before in the last podcast. I am not the same person I was when I started this. I'm a completely different person in every aspect of my life. And how I think, how I process things, and it's not just about me. Everybody else has these feelings, right? And it makes you more aware of everything that's going on around you, and more. More understanding of people. Like, we're very quick to judge people off the hand on how someone acts, how someone looks.
first impressions.
Yeah, right.
I judge him on how he looks every single day.
But
Well, I mean, who wouldn't?
Stephanie
Good
was
button
saying,
polish, you'll be fine.
Stephanie was saying, you better have the rock in there after I'm sitting through all this traffic. I said, well, my partner's bald. I'm about the same size. I'm about the same height as him. Put us together, and you might have something.
No dice. No dice.
We didn't cut the monster.
No, absolutely not.
But why did you gravitate towards police work? You just wanted to have a
So
career through the rest of your life?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting that you asked that question, because that's come up a lot, because I don't have law enforcement in my background, much like you. My dad, like I said, he was an attorney, and he actually was a prosecutor in New York for the Southern District. He'd been a prosecutor in D.C. and really couldn't deal with kind of the government and not being necessarily the best and the brightest that are hired to do this kind of work. And my dad was a real bright man and a go-getter. So, but he did raise me to make sure that should I ever be arrested, and I had a dime, do not waste it on ever calling him.
Really?
Oh, he made that damn straight. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
My father said that too.
Yeah.
I'll help you out with anything. He goes, you get arrested, you're on your own.
And he was not bullshitting me. And most of the time I poked that bear I decided not to poke. So,
well, at least you knew you had to be somewhat self-reliant and responsible. That's really what it is. Yeah. It's responsibility.
I was just going to say, it teaches responsibility to hard
We're only
way.
talking about that today. It's tough love.
Yeah, it's tough love. Well, I bully my kids because I'm trying to make them tough.
Yeah, that's great.
You bully them because they're smaller than you now, and you can bully them. And in a couple of years, they're going to be bullying you.
For now, my son is about an inch shorter than me.
Yeah,
that's
stop feeding him.
I tried that. I tried to lock them in a closet, but it's a whole thing.
Wait until about 20 years when they're wiping your ass. Then
just had a vision. That was a vision right there.
It's like a stomach scraper.
Try to get that one out of your head. But police are the most difficult people, hard-headed people to work with. You need to. That's why therapists who work strictly, or not strictly, but mostly with police, they have to be a real special type of person. And that's why we gravitate towards Dr. Stefanelli, because in my mind, he's one of us.
Yeah.
But he said it perfectly, is once you gain our trust, you can do anything you want.
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
It's an incredibly loyal population. However, you guys are also an unforgiving population.
Oh, without doubt.
Yeah, grudges are held.
Let me tell you, you can do a million things right. You do one thing wrong.
That's it.
It is amazing to watch. So, but I ended up, don't forget, so I grew up in the 80s out in Los Angeles with the gangs. So, and Los Angeles had,
The Watts riots?
So the
Watts riots were 60s.
I was going to say.
Yeah. That was a little before that.
Jesus.
Great job, Mike.
Yeah,
very tactful.
Am I looking better than that, for God's sakes?
That's two people I threw off their game tonight.
Holy crap. So LAPD came out with Crash. So Crash was their gang detail unit. And Crash used to stand for California Residents Against Street Hoodlums, except that wasn't a warm and fuzzy.
Correct.
Right, correct. So we had to redo that. Just like SWAT. SWAT was originally a special weapons attack team. Tag team. Yeah, and then that got changed too. So, and Gates was amazing. Daryl Gates, his men would absolutely go into burning buildings for him. He was truly a cop's cop. So it was during that time, and I still had family back east, and so I was flying cross country and ended up meeting somebody on the plane that I was sitting next to, who I was reading People magazine, because if you ever really want to know the truth about anything in life, it's in People magazine, right? So I was reading the article on gangs, and this young woman says to me, she goes, She goes, do you know anything about gangs? I'm thinking to myself, I'm a resident expert. I've just read People magazine. I'm like, absolutely I do.
Funny you ask.
Yeah, right. So anyway, make a long story short,